Let's listen to Alex talk a little bit. This is a 7th grade boy that's in a Catholic school now. When we saw him, I believe we saw him last summer, he describes, actually I don't have this video segment, but he describes how he now uses his imagery to help him with basketball. Go ahead. But he's going to talk a little bit about what it was like.
Tests in school was a little bit more challenging. Some kids seemed to get things a little bit easier than I did, and I still in the end came through and got it, but it took me a long time to understand what they were talking about.
So he's just validating for us that this comprehension weakness ranges all the way down into the lower grades. It's not just something with the higher grades. I'm going to turn now to hyperlexia. He was not hyperlexic when we saw him, although he had no decoding problems. His comprehension weakness was not severe. So let's talk about what hyperlexia is. It's generally considered a weakness in language comprehension that's in sharp contrast to a remarkable skill in reading words. So if you remember what I told you about Michelle, could she have been labeled hyperlexic? She was the 9th percentile in reading comprehension, but she was at the 80th percentile in reading the words. So yes, she probably could have been. We don't actually have, in the field of education, we don't actually have the definition for hyperlexia completely wired yet, I think, just like we didn't for dyslexia many years ago. Generally, it's the discrepancy between word reading and comprehension, and that's usually the defining characteristic of hyperlexia. It was only brought to awareness in 1967, so it's not been that long. For most hyperlexic children, comprehension of oral and written paragraphs is more difficult than comprehension of words and sentences. Okay? So a word's not the problem as much, or even a sentence, it's more bringing parts to whole for a whole paragraph. So they're usually unable to comprehend large units of meaning. They have problems relating ideas and making inferences. And both of those conditions, by the way, how many of you are here because you're interested in autism? Both of those conditions are usually attributed to autism or autism spectrum disorders. So I thought it was important to put this slide in here. Hyperlexia and autism spectrum disorders share symptoms that correspond to strength and weakness in imagery and processing parts and wholes. So if you have strength in processing parts, and these are not mine, by the way. Those are some that her name is Diane. I believe that it's Twack-Cullen, I believe. I'll have to think about if I have said her name right. These are some symptoms that she wrote up. These students are good at, this is mine on parts, they're good at rote memory, mechanical facts, simple information, simple procedural tasks, simple associations, usually good at word recognition, spelling, rote math, and some short-term immediate repetition. So those would be the parts that we're talking about. But they can have weakness in, if they have weakness in imaging this gestalt, they can be poor in processing complex information, concept formation, abstract and critical thinking, interpretive oral language comprehension, interpretive written language comprehension, following complex oral written directions, problem solving, analysis and synthesis of information, and organizational strategies. And do you all see how that matches what I had written up there about weakness? The symptoms of weak concept imagery really parallels with this. So now we're going to look at some data. So if you have been sleeping, you need to wake up at this point. So what happens when the sensory input of imagery is explicitly brought to consciousness in a clinical and a school environment? And these are, this is data from our learning centers where we've put students in seeing stars and lips for decoding only students, or for comp only students we put them into visualizing and verbalizing, or if we're working with students that are needing something before VV, then we put them into talkies, which is a VV primer. And so we get them into two buckets largely. And it's a decoding bucket where they come for just decoding only or comp only, but sometimes our comp students need some support with decoding, or sometimes our decoding students need some support some support with comprehension. So it's really very interesting to me now that about 50% of the students that we're seeing were doing something to develop their concept imagery. That did not used to be that way. It used to be that we had more students that we saw that were like Lance. And why do you think that was? Why do you think we got referred more of those students years ago? People are saying here, and I hope you are out there, that it's the easier weakness to see. It's not so easy to see that you have difficulty comprehending. This is based on 4,800 students that have come through our testing. This is comparing their pre-test profiles. So these are the students that had decoding weakness. These are students that had comprehension weakness. And you can see that for the decoding only students, where they really were the Lances, their decoding was at the 18th percentile. This is just a mean score. Their comprehension was at the 39th. So you can see that even times when a student can't decode, they can have decent written language comprehension. It's not the overriding factor in their comprehension. But if you look at their the comprehension only students, it's absolutely flip-flop. Can you all see that? That this is how strong they are in decoding versus how weak they are in language comprehension, or written language comprehension. So there's the decoding students only profile. So these are the decoding tests over this way. Down here it says word rec, spelling, word attack, reading rate, reading accuracy, and reading fluency. Of these scores down here, which is the strongest? That's right. And so again, I have this concern that when we look at our students, their word attack skills are better than their other skills. And so if what we're doing in the classroom is focusing on that, we surely may not be getting to word recognition. But look at these students. They look just like Lance. Their oral vocabulary was the 61st percentile, and look how much higher their reading comprehension is, say, than their fluency. Or, well, actually, their vocabulary may account for some of that, but certainly higher than their word recognition. These are the comprehension-only students that look exactly flip-flop. These are the decoding scores tests, and these are the comprehension tests. Now, this you really have to look at with me. This is word rec down here. Here's spelling, word attack, reading rate. This is accuracy, how fast they read in a paragraph and how fluently they are in reading in a paragraph. And you can see that if this is a 50th percentile here, these students that are our comp-only students largely had no trouble with decoding. If you look at their reading comprehension score, it's at the 37th percentile, and that is significantly lower than their reading fluency. Are you all with me with that? Okay. And their oral directions is low. These are both lower than any of these scores. So there's something else going on there.